You'd think it would have started with a text message, or some lipstick on a collar cliché. But for me, the beginning of the end came in the form of a perfectly normal Sunday morning. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee. I had been up since 6, trying to get the egg casserole just right. Not because I cared that much about breakfast, but because it gave me something to focus on other than the weird tension I couldn't explain. Haley was flitting around the kitchen like the hostess she loved to be. Her hair pinned up in one of those messy but intentional ways she probably saw on Pinterest. She was humming. Not a song I recognized. More like the sound people make when they want to seem carefree. I was wiping the counters, watching her out of the corner of my eye. She wore that green dress I always liked on her. Or used to. Lately, everything I liked started feeling like someone else's life. Her daughter, Cassidy, was sitting at the table with her sketchpad and markers. She was drawing a cat in outer space. Her little tongue poked out when she concentrated, just like her mom's used to. The doorbell rang at 9:30 sharp. That was Haley's parents and her younger sister, Marissa. I opened the door and did the usual round of hugs, polite smiles, casual small talk about traffic and weather. They brought pastries from the French bakery downtown. I remember thinking how they smelled better than anything I'd cooked. Everyone settled around the dining table, the kind of spread that would have looked great on Instagram. Fresh berries in little porcelain bowls, mason jars of orange juice and sparkling wine, eggs, toast, sliced avocado, and one of those centerpieces with eucalyptus leaves that Haley was obsessed with. Looks like a magazine spread in here, her dad chuckled. It's all Haley, I said, and I meant it. She knew how to make things look picture-perfect. Cassidy sat between her grandparents, proudly presenting her drawing. This is Luna. She's a space cat who lives on Saturn. Everyone laughed. Haley beamed. It was all so normal. Too normal. About 15 minutes into the meal, right after her mom complimented the rosemary potatoes, Haley stood up. She held her champagne flute like she was about to make a toast. I actually have something to share, she said, and there was a glint in her eyes. A surprise. She rested both hands on her stomach. I'm pregnant. For a second, there was silence. And then the reactions came in waves. Gasps, applause, a high-pitched squeal from her sister. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Her dad stood up and hugged her. I'm so happy for you, he said. You two deserve this. Haley looked at me. She was expecting me to smile, to clap, maybe kiss her hand like they do in movies. I smiled. For exactly 2 seconds. Then I set my fork down gently, looked her in the eyes, and said very calmly, should I be congratulating your ex-husband? The room fell silent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shift in my seat. I didn't blink. I continued, should I be congratulating that coworker you keep staying late with? Her smile evaporated so fast it was like someone turned off a light switch. Her mom's face twisted in horror. Derek! Haley opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. Then came the laugh. Short, forced. Oh my God. Okay. Someone's been working too many hours, she said, reaching for my arm like she could squeeze the crazy out of me. You're so tired, babe. This is ridiculous. Her dad let out a baffled chuckle, unsure if he was supposed to be offended or amused. I just sat there. I didn't say another word. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. Haley, her mom whispered, still frozen mid-toast. Is everything all right? Of course it is, Haley said quickly. He's been overworked. You know how the last few months have been for him. He barely sleeps. He's paranoid, her sister added, trying to help. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of my coffee. It was cold. Cassidy looked back and forth between us, confused but silent. She had stopped drawing. You're being unfair, Derek, her father said. This is supposed to be a celebration. Yeah, Marissa chimed in. Seriously, what is wrong with you? I didn't answer. Instead, I started counting backwards in my head. June. That weekend she said she was at her sister's. She came back tanned. But Marissa lives in a condo in the suburbs, no pool, no backyard. I remember asking about it. She said they went hiking. Then 2 weeks later, she suddenly joined a gym. New trainer. Started doing morning jogs, then afternoon jogs, then jogs that required full makeup. Late nights at the office. Strange receipts from hotels downtown. Lingerie she bought but never wore for me. Now she was 4 weeks pregnant. And somehow, none of this was a coincidence. Haley reached for my hand under the table, like she was trying to keep the peace, or shut me up. Her fingers were cold. "Let's just enjoy breakfast," she said sweetly, too sweetly. "We have so much to celebrate." Her mom nodded, relieved someone was trying to steer the ship. "Yes, let's. A baby is always a blessing." "Even if it's not mine?" I asked. Haley flinched. So did her father. Marissa muttered something I couldn't hear. "Enough," her mother snapped. "Derek, whatever this is, you need to deal with it privately. This is deeply inappropriate." I nodded slowly. "You're right." I pushed my chair back, stood up, and carried my coffee mug into the kitchen. I wasn't going to argue. Not in front of Cassidy. Not in front of her parents. But as I stood by the sink, I could hear the muffled whispering behind me. And all I could think about was how many times I had told myself I was being paranoid. How many signs I'd ignored. I rinsed the mug under cold water, watching the swirl of cream and coffee spin down the drain. Pregnant. For weeks. And I hadn't touched her in almost 2 months. After the breakfast bombshell, I didn't go back into the dining room. I told Haley I had to run to the workshop. Said something about the Harley's rear brake being off again. She didn't stop me. In fact, she barely looked me in the eye as I grabbed my jacket. "Text me later," she said, still smiling in front of her family. I didn't answer. My shop's a 20-minute drive, out behind the old orchard on Route 9. It's quiet out there, nobody to bother me, no phone signal half the time. A man's kind of place. I parked, walked in, locked the door behind me, and just stood there for a while. The air smelled like dust, oil, and iron. My tools sat untouched on the pegboard, like they were waiting for something real to fix. I didn't touch the Harley. I didn't even open the toolbox. I just sat on an overturned bucket in the corner and stared at the cement floor, trying to make sense of everything I had ignored. When people talk about betrayal, they make it sound like it comes crashing through the door, sudden and loud. But mine came in pieces, moments that didn't mean anything at the time. They just sat there in my brain like puzzle pieces I didn't know I had. But now they were snapping into place. It started with the jogs. She wasn't the jogging type. I mean, we had a treadmill that doubled as a clothes rack for 3 years. She used to roll her eyes at women who ran in full makeup. Then suddenly, she was lacing up brand new Nikes at 6 a.m. and coming back after dark. She said it cleared her mind, that it helped with stress. First, I supported it, told her I was proud of her discipline, but it changed fast. She got a gym membership, not the cheap local one, but some fancy place with eucalyptus towels and juice bars. She started seeing a trainer. Group classes, she said. Boot camp. It's a whole thing. But I'd never seen a bill for group classes with private trainer rates. She started washing her gym clothes separately. I figured she was being thoughtful, sweat and all. But one day, when I went to grab a spare hoodie from the laundry basket, I found a man's t-shirt in her pile. Not mine. Different size, different brand. I held it up for a second, confused. She walked in and froze. "Oh," she said, laughing nervously. "That's Marissa's ex's. I borrowed it when I stayed over there. That weekend in June." I didn't push it. I wanted to believe her. But now, sitting alone in my shop, all those moments played back like a movie reel in my head. The weekend in June when she stayed at her sister's, but came back with a fresh tan and beach hair. Marissa lives in an apartment complex near a Target. No pool. No beach. I had asked about the tan, jokingly, and Haley said, they had a kiddie pool on the balcony. I laid out. I believed her. She came home with a sunburn on her shoulders and sand still in her flip-flops. Then there was the lingerie. She bought new sets online. I only knew because the packages came to the house, and I happened to sign for one. Black lace, red satin. I remember thinking this could be fun. But weeks went by, and she never wore any of it. I asked once, teasing, She said she was saving it for a special night. That night never came. Then the credit card alerts. We shared a joint account mostly for groceries and utilities. But I started noticing weird charges, not huge, just off. A $42 dinner at a wine bar downtown. A boutique hotel, not even the fancy kind, but the discreet, mid-priced one near the freeway. I asked about that one. She said it was a spa day with her sister. Haley doesn't like spas. She hates massages. Says she doesn't like strangers touching her. I remember laughing about it. I even told a friend at work, yeah, my wife's the only woman I know who'd rather clean grout than get a massage. But now all those details hit like gut punches. She wasn't at a spa. She wasn't finding herself. She was preparing to leave me. She just hadn't packed yet. I pulled out my phone, opened the calendar. She said she was 4 weeks pregnant. I counted backward. For weeks. That was the last week of June. Right after her sister's weekend. That's when it happened. I knew it in my bones. I stood up, paced the shop floor. My boots echoed off the concrete. My thoughts kept jumping, from denial to rage to confusion. But under all of it, there was something colder, calmer. A voice that said, "It all fits. The signs were there. You just didn't want to see them." I sat down again, pulled out my phone, and scrolled through old texts. Working late again, weary face. Boot camp was brutal. Need wine and Netflix. Can you take Cassidy to school tomorrow? I'm wiped. There was always a reason, always an excuse. But when someone wants to cheat, you don't see it in what they say, you see it in the gaps. In the parts they don't say. In the holes between their words. I realized something else, too. I wasn't sad. Not in that moment. I was numb. Not because I didn't care. I cared too much. That's why it hurt. But right then, the emotion turned to strategy. To calculation. If I had been wrong, Haley would have screamed at me that morning. Accused me. Demanded I apologize. But instead, she played it safe. Deflected. Tried to act like I was the one unraveling. And her family? They were so quick to jump in, defend her, blame me. That told me something too. Maybe they'd seen cracks before. Maybe they'd ignored them. Maybe Haley had her story ready long before I opened my mouth. Maybe she had been expecting me to say something. Just not at the breakfast table. I stared at the wall. There was a nail in the cement where I used to hang my old welding helmet. Now it was bare. I suddenly missed that helmet. The way it blocked out sparks, noise, heat. I needed a helmet for my life. I opened my notebook, the old one I used for measurements and parts lists. I flipped to a blank page and wrote down a name. Lance. That was the guy she joked about once. The only man who makes me sweat, she said, laughing. My trainer Lance. He's an absolute sadist. She'd say it like it was funny, like I was supposed to laugh too. I never met him, never even saw a photo, but I remembered the way her voice changed when she said his name. Light, breezy, too breezy. I underlined it, then wrote, phone records, bank statements, gym schedule, June weekend, and at the bottom of the page I wrote, DNA test, because the truth was, even if she hadn't cheated, I wasn't taking any chances. Not anymore. I wasn't going to let someone gaslight me into being the crazy one. I had ignored enough signs. Now it was time to start looking. By the time I left the workshop that evening, my mind wasn't spinning anymore. It was locked onto one objective. Get proof. Not suspicions, not gut feelings, not weird receipts. Proof I could hold in my hands. Proof no one could twist or explain away. When I got home, the house was quiet except for the clatter of Haley washing dishes in the kitchen. She glanced up when I walked in, trying to read my mood. I didn't give her anything. No glare, no cold shoulder, no questions. Just a small, polite nod. That alone seemed to confuse her more than any confrontation would have. If she looked guilty, she hid it well. She asked about my day, kissed my cheek, acted like the morning's explosion at breakfast had been nothing more than a little awkward misunderstanding. Her parents were gone by then, and Cassidy was upstairs doing homework. Everything looked normal. Too normal. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her. But once I started paying attention, really paying attention, the cracks widened fast. That night, after she went to bed early with some excuse about pregnancy fatigue, I stayed downstairs in the kitchen, opening the laptop we shared. Her password hadn't changed in years. I justified it by reminding myself of the morning. If she expected me to swallow the story she fed her parents, she clearly thought I wasn't capable of seeing the truth. Her phone account was the first place I checked, the one tied to our joint plan, the one that listed call histories and message logs even if she deleted them off her device. I clicked the tab and waited. When the page loaded, the name jumped out at me immediately. Yoga Lights. Hundreds of texts. Dozens of calls. Every single day. I knew every contact in her phone, every coworker she mentioned, every neighbor, every relative. There was no Yoga Lights. Not unless someone out there legally changed their name to a discount candle brand. I scrolled through the timestamps. Conversations at 5:30 a.m. Right before her jogs. Calls at 11 p.m. when she said she needed alone time. Messages during lunch breaks she claimed she ate with coworkers. On the weekends she said she was with her sister. My stomach twisted, but I kept going. At first the log didn't tell me who he really was, just that he was there, present in her life every hour of the day. More present than I was. But a name hidden behind a fake label wasn't going to cut it. I needed the truth. I copied the number and ran it through a reverse lookup site. And there it was. Lance D. Personal line. The trainer at her gym. My jaw clenched so hard I felt pain shoot up my temple. A single part of me, a small, pathetic part, still hoped this was all a massive misunderstanding. But hope has a short lifespan when you're looking the truth in the face. By the time the clock hit midnight, I'd gone through the credit card statements, too. The wine bar charges she blamed on girls' night. The double movie tickets on nights she told me she was too exhausted for anything besides sweatpants and tea. The downtown suites hotel charges, one in June, one in July, one just last week. Each one lined up perfectly with a day she'd claimed to be anywhere but where she really was. I sat back in my chair, staring at the illuminated screen in the dark kitchen. The house felt too still, too clean, too peaceful for what was happening inside it. My entire marriage was cracking apart in pixelated evidence, and she slept 10 feet above me, breathing slow and steady like nothing was wrong. That was the moment I realized I needed something undeniable, something more than digital traces, something she couldn't twist with explanations about stress or hormones or misunderstandings. I needed eyes on the ground. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I stepped outside and made a call to a private investigator. Old school guy. No nonsense. His name was Carson, recommended by a coworker who used him during a custody battle. I told him I needed surveillance. Photos, locations, dates, as soon as possible. He didn't ask for drama, didn't ask for stories, just said, "Text me her schedule and the number of the guy." I did. He started that day. For that entire week, I played the role of the perfect husband. The kind who smiles, who cooks dinner, who asks about her day, who kisses Cassidy on the forehead and compliments Haley's new nail polish. I didn't give her a single reason to be suspicious. In fact, she relaxed around me noticeably. She even became affectionate again. A hand on my arm. A kiss on the cheek while passing in the hallway. A soft, "I'm glad you're in my corner" one night before bed. It made my skin crawl. Not because the affection was unwanted, but because she used it like a blanket, warm, comforting, covering something rotten underneath. On the 5th day, Carson texted me, "You should see this. Check your email." My hands shook as I opened the inbox. Not from fear, from certainty. I already knew what I would see. I'd known for weeks, maybe months, before I admitted it. The first photo was of the gym parking lot. Her car was there. Lance's was parked beside it. They stood by the driver's side door talking. Too close. His hand brushed her back. She didn't move away. The second, them walking toward his car, laughing, her ponytail swinging behind her. The third, them in a cafe, not the kind of place you go with a trainer. Not a post-workout smoothie shack. A place with candles on the tables and wine glasses already set out. The fourth hit me the hardest. They were in the parking lot of a hotel. She had both hands on his chest. He leaned in, and she kissed him like she'd been waiting all day for it. The timestamp? The exact weekend she claimed she was at her sister's house, helping with a garage sale. I stared at that photo for so long my eyes blurred. Not because of the kiss, betrayal isn't in the act itself. It's in the familiarity, the ease, the obvious routine of it. You could tell it wasn't their first time. You could tell it was a habit. My breath felt stuck in my throat. Not because she cheated, but because she had done it confidently, comfortably, without fear. She hadn't just lied. She'd built a system for lying. And she trusted that system more than she trusted me. I closed the laptop, sat still for a long time, let the truth settle in like dust. When I finally stood up, I felt something strange. Not heartbreak, not rage, not despair. Clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I knew what I needed to do next, and it started with collecting everything. Every receipt, every message, every call, every photo. Not to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to explode at her like she probably expected. No, I was going to be calm, strategic, because this wasn't just betrayal. This was evidence. And evidence has a purpose. After I saw those photos, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't confront her. I cleaned the kitchen, put away the laptop, poured myself a drink I didn't even finish. Then I went upstairs, got into bed next to her, and kissed her forehead like everything was fine. She shifted in her sleep, murmured something, and tucked her hand into the crook of my arm like we were still in love. I stared at the ceiling for hours. That night I made a decision. I wouldn't react. Not yet. Not until I was ready. From that point on, I became exactly what she wanted me to be, the doting husband. I let her believe I'd moved past the breakfast blow-up, that my outburst had been some strange, stress-induced moment of irrational jealousy. She bought it. Maybe because she needed to. Maybe because she wanted to. Either way, the performance began. I brought her flowers. Not roses, lilies. Her favorite. I started making dinner most nights, even plating it nicely, taking photos, and sending them to her at work with captions like, "Look what's waiting for you when you get home, Red Heart." I offered to drive her to the gym. Once she said no, I offered to, at least swing by and say hi to Lance. She laughed. "You'll scare him away. He already thinks you're intense." Good. I kept smiling. We went to prenatal appointments together. She held my hand while the ultrasound tech pointed out the shape of the baby's head, the flicker of a heartbeat. She cried. I did not. I just nodded, played the part, took a photo of the printout and added it to the fridge. She began to relax again, stopped double-checking her phone screen around me, stopped turning away when she replied to texts. She even left her laptop open on the kitchen table one afternoon while she went to get the mail. That's how I found the folder labeled training logs. Inside were spreadsheets, calendar invites, and one email thread that started with the subject line, Vegas. I didn't open it. I took a **T. Everything went into a hidden folder on a password-protected flash drive I kept in my tool cabinet. Every receipt I could find, every call log, every photo Carson sent, every message timestamp, **TS, bank records, hotel charges, GPS locations. By then, I had a full paper trail that told a story far more detailed than any conversation ever could. One day, while she was getting ready in the bathroom, I asked, "Do you think he looks like me?" She poked her head out, toothbrush in hand. "Who?" "The baby." "Oh," she laughed. "I hope not. Your baby pictures looked like a wrinkled meatball." I smiled, kissed her temple. "Guess we'll see." That night, I called an attorney. Her name was Andrea Cole, known for her work on contested divorces and messy custody cases. We met in her office downtown. She was sharp, fast-talking, and had zero patience for sentimentality. "Do you want custody of the child?" she asked. "If it's mine," I said. Andrea looked at me for a long second. "You think it's not?" I pulled out the flash drive, set it on the desk. "I don't guess anymore," I said. "I confirm." She plugged it in, browsed the folders. Didn't flinch. Didn't gasp. Just nodded, typed a few notes and said, "Here's what you do. Act normal. Don't confront her. Don't let on you know anything. Keep documenting. We're going to do this clean." "And the baby?" I asked. She leaned back. "Order a paternity test the day he's born. You're legally presumed the father until proven otherwise. If he's not yours, you'll need hard proof to avoid responsibility. You're walking a tightrope, Derek. Don't fall off it." I left her office feeling like I was in the middle of a heist. Back home, Haley was curled up on the couch watching a show we used to binge together. She looked up at me like nothing was wrong. "I was just about to pause for you," she said, holding out the blanket. "Come sit." I did. We sat together like everything was fine. I brought her snacks halfway through the episode. She kissed my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for being patient with me." I smiled. She had no idea. It was strange, pretending to love someone you no longer trusted. There were moments I almost pitied her. Moments I wanted to scream, "How could you do this to us?" But the thing is, when betrayal is quiet and calculated, your reaction has to be just as cold. Emotion wouldn't protect me in court. Rage wouldn't rewrite the bank statements. Tears wouldn't change the DNA. So I waited, gathered, prepared. Even Cassidy started to notice the shift. She came into the garage one evening while I was organizing the flash drive's contents and said, "Mom seems really happy lately." I froze. "Yeah. She says you're trying harder. That she feels like things are going back to how they were." I didn't know what to say. Cassidy hesitated, then said quietly, "Do you still love her?" I looked at her. This little girl who had never been mine by blood but felt more like family than anyone else. "I'm doing what I have to do," I said. She nodded. Maybe she didn't understand. Maybe she understood more than I knew. By mid-October, I had everything in place. Andrea had drafted preliminary divorce documents. Carson had even found out that Lance had a prior HR complaint from a female client at his last gym. Haley didn't know it yet, but her carefully guarded secret was a stack of dominoes, and I had the finger ready to flick. Then one night, 2 weeks before her due date, she turned to me in bed and said, "I'm scared." I didn't answer right away. "Scared of what?" I asked. "Of losing this. Of losing you. I know I haven't been perfect lately. I know you've had doubts about us." I turned to face her, looked her right in the eyes. "I'm here, aren't I?" She nodded. Tears welled up. "You are. And that means everything." I kissed her forehead again. But inside, I felt nothing. No rage. No sadness. Just stillness. I wasn't here out of love anymore. I was here for the truth. And the truth was coming soon. The baby would be born in a matter of days. And when he arrived, so would the answer. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because I was halfway through sanding down a cabinet door in the garage when my phone buzzed, vibrating loud on the workbench like it knew what kind of call it was. Haley's name flashed on the screen. "It's time," she said, her voice breathless but calm. I didn't speak, just grabbed my jacket and keys. Left everything running, the sander still humming on the bench, the garage door half open. At the hospital, I played my part. Signed the forms. Held her hand through the contractions. Told Cassidy everything would be okay when we dropped her at her aunt's for the night. I even joked with the nurse about the snacks in the waiting room vending machine. But under it all, my mind kept looping one phrase like background music. "Today, you find out the truth." It didn't hit me when the baby came. It didn't even feel real. The room was bright, too bright. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Machines beeped. Haley screamed, then sobbed, then laughed. Doctors moved like they'd done it 100 times, which they probably had. And then there he was. The doctor lifted him up, slippery and red and wailing. "A healthy baby boy," the nurse said, smiling. "Full head of hair. Congratulations, Dad." Haley reached for my hand, still crying. "Isn't he beautiful?" I looked at him. He had a thick patch of dark hair. Not dark like mine, dark like someone else's. His skin tone was warmer than mine. His eyes didn't crinkle the way Cassidy's did when she was born. But I smiled anyway. "He is." She leaned back, exhausted. Thank you for being here. For everything. I kissed her forehead and stayed silent. While she slept, I got to work. I had already purchased a paternity test kit, express delivery, non-invasive, certified for legal use. It was in the glove compartment of my truck, sealed and ready. The instructions were simple. A buccal swab from inside the baby's cheek and one from me. I waited until the nurse left and Haley was snoring softly. Then, moving quietly, I took the sample. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. Just precise. Collected. Methodical. I sealed the swabs, labeled everything per the instructions, and drove them straight to the lab that night. I didn't even go home first. Dropped them off like someone returning a library book. No emotion, no second-guessing. By the time I returned to the hospital, Haley was awake, feeding the baby. She looked at me like I'd hung the stars. "I've never felt so complete," she whispered. "We're a family now, a real one." I kissed her cheek and nodded. "We are." She looked relieved, relaxed. For the first time in months, I think she believed the chaos had passed, that this was the fresh start. But I had already scheduled a meeting with Andrea, told her to expect a result within 48 hours, told her to begin preparing the final documents. I stayed at the hospital that night, sat in the visitor recliner next to her bed while nurses drifted in and out. Everyone kept calling me Dad. They gave me forms to fill, wristbands to wear, a paper that asked if I wanted the baby circumcised. I didn't sign, just said I'd talk to my wife. They nodded politely, but I wasn't planning to be involved. Not if the test came back the way I expected. The next day was a blur. Her parents came. Marissa showed up with balloons. Cassidy visited and held the baby for 5 minutes before getting bored and asking for my phone. Everyone kept saying the same things. "He looks just like you. He has your nose. You must be over the moon." I smiled, nodded, thanked them. Inside, I felt like I was standing in the eye of a storm that no one else could see. The results came the next morning. An email. Subject line, "Confidential. Paternity results enclosed." I stepped out into the hallway, walked past the snack machines and waiting area, into the stairwell where no one would follow. I opened the PDF. Probability of paternity, 0. 0%. There it was. Clean. Clinical. Unarguable. I stared at the number for a long time. No emotion at first. Just a sudden, hollow calm. The kind you feel when the thing you feared finally confirms itself, and the guessing is over. I walked back to the room. She was asleep again, the baby in the clear hospital bassinet next to her. I waited until a nurse finished taking vitals and left. Then I shut the door, sat down in the chair, waited. She stirred, opened her eyes slowly, smiled. "Hey, you okay?" I nodded. "We need to talk." She blinked, still groggy. "What's wrong?" I pulled out my phone, opened the email, and turned the screen toward her. First, she didn't get it, just stared. Then her eyes narrowed. "What is this?" she asked. "You know what it is," I said. "A beat." "No," she said quickly. "No, that can't be right." I stayed quiet, let the silence fill the space between us. This has to be a mistake," she said. "There's no way. That's not even possible." I didn't respond, just looked at her, watched the color drain from her face. Maybe it's lab error. Maybe the sample got mixed up. Or maybe your DNA. Something went wrong. "Haley." She stopped. "I know," I said. "I've known for a while." Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hands started shaking. I've seen the receipts," I continued. "The texts, the hotel charges, the messages to Lance, the photos." She said nothing. "You've been lying to me for months," I said. "Don't insult me by pretending now." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Derek, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just supposed to be a distraction. I didn't think." "You didn't think?" I repeated flatly. "That's the first honest thing you've said in a while." She looked at the baby, then back at me. "But what about him? He's still just a baby. He didn't do anything wrong." No, he didn't, I said. But he's not my son. She broke then, completely, tried to reach for my hand. I stood up. I've already filed for divorce, I said. You'll be served in a few days. My attorney will be in touch. She gasped. You can't just walk away from this. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm walking toward the truth, and I suggest you start doing the same. Then I left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't make a scene. Just walked down the hallway, past the nurses who smiled and said, "Congratulations again." Past the nursery with the other newborns, out the sliding glass doors and into the morning sunlight. I got into my truck, turned off my phone, and drove away. That night, I packed my things. No drama, no yelling, just quiet movements in the dark. Cassidy came with me. She'd seen enough to know something was broken, even if no one said it out loud. Haley called, then texted, then called again. I didn't answer. When she finally got me on the line, her voice cracked. You're punishing me. You're abandoning your own family. No, I said calmly. I'm leaving a lie. I gave her 3 months to vacate the house. Andrea handled the paperwork. I refused all claims of custody. Told the court I'd provide documentation proving I wasn't the father. Lance tried to disappear, but we found him. State lines don't protect you from responsibility. His name's on the support order now. Haley cried betrayal. Funny how quickly loyalty dissolves when the truth shows up in court. The life she built on lies collapsed. I didn't touch a single brick. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. Haley moved in with her parents. Lance's paycheck started shrinking thanks to child support enforcement. I bought a small lakeside place. Cassidy and I settled in quietly. Her grades improved. She started sleeping better. We talked more, laughed more. On the day the final divorce letter arrived, we went out for dinner. The kind of place Haley never liked. Too ordinary, she used to say. Cassidy raised her glass of soda. To starting over. I smiled. To truth. And never pretending again. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was living. And that silence, the peaceful, guiltless kind, felt better than any apology ever could.